Test 1, 2, 3. Test 1, 2, 3.
If they got some kind of filter on their face.
If everyone's ready, we'll call the meeting to order. I'd like to call this meeting of the Hamilton Municipal Heritage Committee to order. A reminder that all electronic devices are to be switched to a non-audible function during our committee meetings. Please note that quorum is present. So we'll start with our roll call. As I announce your names, if you can just acknowledge that you're here. Councillor Kretsch. Karen Burke.
I'm here, yeah.
Present.
Graham Carroll.
Present.
Lynn Lundstedt.
Present.
Andy McLaren.
Present.
Andrew Douglas. Stefan Spalnik.
Present.
Madam Clerk, are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, Madam Chair, there are changes to the agenda today. So under communication item, added item 5.1, correspondence from Jim and Margaret Hendricks respecting the designation of 176 Wilson Street, East Ancaster. There is an added delegation request, item 6.1, Peter Tice, Pearl Hospitality Incorporated, Ancaster Mill, respecting item 10.3, notice of intention to demolish the building located at 535 Old Dundas Road, Ancaster, being a non-designated property listed on the municipal property or the municipal heritage register for today's meeting. And under item 7, delegations, the delegation from Kayla Jonas Galvin. Kayla has advised that she cannot attend today, but has sent her colleague Jacqueline McDermott on her behalf, and Miranda Brunton will also be here today. And there is an added consent item, 9.3, the Heritage Permit Review Subcommittee minutes from November 14th, 2023. There is also an added discussion item, item 10.4, Hamilton Wentworth Heritage Association membership renewal.
Thank you very much. May I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
I see Karen, I see Graham.
And as we move to vote, is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that item is carried, and we move on to our declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest today? Seeing none, under our approval of minutes of the previous meeting, we have our meeting notes from November 28th, 2023. May I have a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
I see Councillor Kretsch and I see Stefan.
And is there any comments or discussion in regards to those minutes? If not, we'll move to vote. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that item is carried. Our communication items, we begin with item 5.1 as correspondence from Jim and Margaret Hendricks respecting the designation of 176 Wilson Street East in Ancaster. Is there any discussion from the committee? If not, we'll move to vote on that communications item. Is there anyone opposed to receiving? Seeing none, that item is carried.
Sorry, Madam Chair, just a mover and seconder.
Oh, sorry.
I see Graham and I see Stefan.
And still no one opposed. Our delegation requests are next before us. May I have a mover and a seconder to put the delegation requests on the floor?
I see Karen and I see Andy.
So we have item 6.1 is Peter Tice. Is there any questions of the committee? If not, we'll move to vote on receiving the delegation requests. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that item is carried. Delegation 7.1 is from Kayla Jonas Galvin, and Jacqueline is here today, and Miranda Brunton from Infrastructure Ontario, respecting the cultural heritage evaluation of John Sapinka Courthouse and the SCJ Family Courthouse. So Jacqueline and Miranda are here to speak to the committee respecting that item. Are there any questions from the committee? Councillor?
Sorry, just wondering if there was a presentation slide deck that's going to be presented as part of this. I didn't see it in the, there is not. Okay. Just checking to make sure. Just wanted a copy in case there was. Okay, bye.
Through the chair, Alyssa Golden, Cultural Heritage Program Lead. So on your last agenda were the 2 surveys that the folks who are delegating here today were looking for feedback on, and Aaliyah was kind enough to recirculate those when this agenda was sent out. So I'm not sure if Miranda and Jacqueline were going to go through any sort of formal discussion or just look for specific feedback on those surveys, and if it'd be helpful, we can try to pull those up if either Miranda or Jacqueline have them, or we can grab them on our end as well.
Graham, did you question or comment?
Through the chair, I can leave that to Jacqueline if she wants to pull it up, but we'd also want to take the time to kind of introduce the program as well for clarity of why we have these forms and why we're coming to you.
Oh, that would be great. Thanks, Miranda. So Graham will wait on his question. So go ahead, Miranda.
Okay, perfect. Well, good lunchtime to new and returning members of the Hamilton Municipal Heritage Committee. My name is Miranda Brunton, and I'm a Cultural Heritage Manager at IO, and with me I have the wonderful Jacqueline from ARA. So IO has retained ARA to do 2 cultural heritage evaluations on 2 of the buildings that were mentioned earlier. So this is part of a cultural heritage evaluation update program that we are currently performing at IO. The purpose of this is to ensure that all of our evaluation documentation is up to date and that we include critical things that were missed as part of the last evaluation, namely being community engagement. So reaching out to the folks here to sort of ask your feedback, ask information. I know that the cultural heritage planners at the city have been great and provided with lots of information, but we wanted to come to the Hamilton Municipal Heritage Committee to help us out with our community engagement program for these 2 properties. So I'm going to hand it over to Jacqueline to sort of talk about the specifics of reaching out and sort of this first stage of engagement.
Sure. Hi, everyone. As Miranda said, my name is Jacqueline McDermott. I'm a project manager at Archaeological Research Associates. I think I can just start by giving a brief intro to each of the properties that we're interested in feedback through the survey. I believe you're all provided with, and then we can open to discussion on the survey questions. First is the Hamilton Superior Court Family Justice Courthouse, which is located in Hamilton's downtown core at the corner of McNabb and Main, right in front of the Canadian Football Hall of Fame and beside City Hall. Originally constructed as a Carnegie Library in 1913, the structure served as Hamilton's main library for 67 years before it was vacated in 1980, and was subsequently renovated around 1987 and included a large addition on the back. And the new family courthouse opened in 1989. The second property is the John Sapinka Courthouse, also in Hamilton's downtown core with right by Gore Park. It was originally constructed as the Dominion Public Building between 1935 and 36 and was used as the post office, which closed in 91 and was purchased by the province and officially opened as the courthouse in 1999. So I just can do a quick run through of the questions in the survey. First is, in your opinion, what makes the courthouse property special or unique? Then we were looking at gathering any stories that any individuals may have that they can tell us about the courthouse from your experience. And what elements of the courthouse property are not important? What elements do you find are important? And from your point of view, what is the one historical detail that you think that the consulting team, i.e. us at ARA, should know about the courthouse? And if there's any additional information, there's an open part at the end that you can type in anything that you feel we should consider as part of the built heritage assessment. So I think we can go from there and open to discussion. That's all right.
Councillor?
I'm really not sure what I'm going to say will make complete sense or be the right form for what I'm going to ask about, but oh well, here we are. The John Sapinka Courthouse is, one part official court thing and one part something out of Hogwarts. And so, especially the lower floor where all the elevators are. It's a beautiful building in some ways, outside its official use. But the public really has no access to this building. So, and to be able to see that cultural heritage, like you would in Chicago, you get access to the building like this in Chicago anytime you want to go look at it. In New York City, same thing, right? So I'm wondering if part of anything you're doing here relates to its public use and permitting a public use as part of your assessment.
So I can take that away. So thanks through the chair. Thank you, Councillor, for your question. We can take that back to the management team. Because this is a functional and running courthouse, there are limits in terms of safety and requirements and so forth. But that is something, if the value is of public access, that's something we can take back to our folks at the management team to consider as part of it. But I can't guarantee anything simply because of the function of the courthouse.
Totally get that. Thank you for considering my random question.
Graham?
I know it might seem kind of odd, but what is the actual goal of these surveys? Like, what do you hope to get out of it?
So through the chair, thanks so much for the questions. So per the standards and guidelines for provincial heritage properties, as part of our evaluation work, we're looking to get community feedback. So part of that too could help us with the understanding of what is the value to the public about the property. That's something that we may have not considered from a provincial point of view. So if there's any elements, like Jacqueline was saying, if there's any historical tidbits or something like to say, or if there are attributes of the building that you think are, really interesting and really contribute to the cultural heritage value of the property, that's important for us to know and contribute and put together. And part of coming out of this is that we'll take a look at the statement and we'll put that all together. So for the management of the property going forward, we understand the cultural heritage value in its totality and how we sort of monitor and maintain the property going forward. I hope that gives some clarity to the question.
A question to staff. I know that especially the John Sapinka Courthouse with other items that have gone forward through heritage permit review, have those comments been sent over at all with, because I know a lot of discussion has taken place at the working group level. Just wondering if that commentary has gone to infrastructure.
Through the chair, so staff have filled out the surveys from staff's perspective and provided information in terms of the current municipal designations of the properties, and also provided access to our research files. But I think in terms of the points that you were bringing up around the recent heritage permits for potentially the flooring of the John Sapinka Courthouse, that might be good feedback to provide through this forum in terms of sort of what came out of those discussions at permit review as a part of that process.
Are there other questions or comments? Anything anyone would like to? Go ahead, Lynn.
Through the chair, I'm just curious. It says this questionnaire is being sent to stakeholders. And I guess to go back to Councillor Kretsch's comment about the public not really having a lot of access to this building, aside from the historical information that staff has provided or is going to provide, do you really think you're going to get a lot of benefit out of this particular building, the questionnaire?
So through the chair, any feedback we find is, valuable and so forth. And even if there's no access to the inside, there's still the exteriors that are part there. And as part of maintaining our property, yes, we do find it valuable, even if there's no public access to everything. And there's many properties we have, even, individual houses that are designated at the city level where there's no public access to the inside, but there's still public value in maintaining the exteriors as part of everything else. So as with everything else, it's not uncommon to have non-public elements to buildings. So definitely, like anything we can, and any feedback too, if there's an interest to have a public element part of it. Sometimes we might roll it to a program that maybe before doors open, this could be an opportunity for something being there. But once again, due to the functionality of it being an active courthouse, there are limits of what we can do. Hopefully that answered your question or addresses it partly.
It did, but I'm just curious as to who the stakeholders are.
So through the chair, thanks for the qualifications. I'll actually hand it over to Jacqueline if you want to mention some of the other stakeholders that we're also engaging as part of this.
Sure, of course. I don't have the list of the stakeholders in front of me, but I believe they are the tenants of each of the buildings. So various departments that occupy office space in both of the buildings.
Yep, and we've also reached out to the ACO as some other interest communities, as well as the Indigenous communities in the area as well, to gain their perspective.
Is there any further comments? Did any of the members of permit review want to reflect what was said at those meetings?
I speak? Yes, through the chair. So I would recommend then that the permit review committee go back and look at the previous discussions and maybe put together some information to be submitted as part of the survey. Yes. That's reasonable.
Is there sufficient timing for that to be turned around for January?
Through the chair, so just in terms of the timing of, I know that the folks are keen to get some feedback on this, and the original deadline for the comments has already passed. What staff can do is pull, I'm not sure how detailed the minutes are. We can certainly relay, just based on our attendance at the meeting, the general concerns. There were some high-level concerns raised and highlighted in the actual meeting minutes when the permits were discussed. So we can pull that information together if we haven't already passed that along. I think there's a number of items that we are going to be scanning that the folks at ARA had flagged from our physical files, so we can send them along when we send that information. And if there's a desire to have more of a conversation, we can have that at the first permit review meeting in the new year and see if there's any additional feedback they might want to provide.
Thank you. That sounds appropriate, because hopefully there is something captured in the meeting minutes. We certainly had a lot of discussions, mainly around the floor and the number of holes.
Boy.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Graham.
I just wonder if there's three of us from that Heritage Permit Review Subcommittee that went through these here today, four of us, that we could have a quick little discussion after and just try to remember what our highlights were, and we would pass it on to Melissa to make sure you guys know what we were concerned about.
I think from just a committee standpoint, they're both very significant buildings, both going to be related to the areas of where the LRT development will be happening. So again, from an architectural standpoint, they're significant properties that we wouldn't want to see the exteriors greatly changed. Both have longstanding historical context to the city and city's growth and development. So again, significant properties that we are happy that you've created or included us as one of the stakeholders and commenting on this. So thank you very much for coming to the committee meeting today. Is there any further questions or any comments anyone would like to share? Stefan? Oh, go ahead, Stefan.
I don't know if they hold, if the building's open on the weekends, like for court matters, but if they could add it to doors open, I would love to see inside the old post office. I've seen pictures from the outside and it looks absolutely beautiful. It would be wonderful to be able to have tours or something on doors open to be actually able to see inside. I would really appreciate that. I would go. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Miranda or Jacqueline, is there anything further that you'd like to discuss about the properties, or would you like to go through the specific questions?
So we went through the specific questions, so I think it's maybe up to the committee is if you want to, we invite you to each of the committee members to take away the form and sort of fill that out, or if there's a group approach that wants to take, we appreciate all the feedback. So even Stefan, thanks for that about your interest, and from the councillor that there seems to be an interest of public access. Even for a little bit, we'll take that back to the team. But I will leave it up to the committee to see what functions best. If each of the committee members wants to take away some time and fill out the forms and flip it back to us, we appreciate that. If there's a preference to do a group approach, it sounds like there's a preference that they want some sort of feedback from the Heritage Committee. So I allow that up to you. This is your feedback, and we are happy to receive how you want to provide it.
Oh, that's great. So I think maybe that is the approach. If we can take this away to come back, permit review committee comments will get consolidated, and then if anyone has any further discussion, we can bring that back to our January meeting, and we can forward that along. No, that's great. Okay. Is there any further discussion? All right. Well, thank you very much, Miranda and Jacqueline. Okay. So can I have a mover and a seconder to receive the delegation?
I see Stefan, I see Lynn.
And as we move to vote, is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that item is carried. We now move on to item 7.2, which is Peter Tice, Pearl Hospitality, Inc. of Ancaster Mill, respecting item 10.3, notice of the intention to demolish the building located at 535 Old Dundas Road in Ancaster, being a non-designated property listed on the Municipal Heritage Register, PD 23183, Ward 12. Peter is here to answer any questions that the committee has on this item. Welcome, Peter. Do we have any questions? Or?
Hello, Madam Chair. Thank you. I think I got the short straw on the chair.
Some
but
of these
that's
chairs
okay.
are very low.
That's okay. Thank you.
Is there anything that you'd like to say or present, or would you just?
Just, if I could, a couple of points, and if the chair would allow me 10 seconds of liberty based on your last topic. Many of you will know, some of you will not know, of course, when the family court was redeveloped, and it was called the Unified Family Court. It was an experimental court system for the province of Ontario. Prior to the Unified Family Court, people going through separations and matrimonial issues wound up in different courts under different jurisdictions for a divorce here and custody there and so on and so forth. And it put people through quite a legal nightmare. I say this as a lawyer. And the province came up with this idea of, you know, one-stop shopping, if I could call it, for all things relating to family law. Hamilton had two very, very forward-thinking family court judges, Judge Van Duzer, Judge Steinberg, who were highly regarded in the world of family law. And so Hamilton was the pilot project for the Unified Family Court system, which of course was astoundingly successful. And you see that court system implemented throughout the province now. So there's just 12 seconds of a little bit of background about why that building was developed the way it was, and to the credit of the Hamilton, sort of the judicial community and so forth. So for whatever that's worth, and you might ignore it.
Thank you very much for sharing that.
And I'm here really to answer questions you might have relating to agenda item 10.3. I know you have in front of you the report from the structural engineers that we commissioned to do an assessment. You have the a thorough report from Alyssa and Scott in front of you as well. And so I think it's reasonably fair to say that this is not a property that in its totality should be saved and redeemed and cultivated. The house is very, very old. You've seen the many pictures that are in the reports. There was an elderly gentleman, and he passed away, being the owner of the house. The house sat vacant for a year and a half. We've been through the house, and there really isn't much that is salvageable, if anything, within the property. So I think you have those reports, and I'll wait for your questions if you have any.
Do we have questions or comments? Go ahead, Karen.
Through the chair, thank you for that little introduction. That was very interesting about the courthouse. So regarding 535 Old Dundas Road, I went and looked. I mean, I looked from the outside yesterday. It actually looks still really nice from the outside. Maybe I didn't walk around the back, but you know, it's unfortunate that we're going to lose it. I saw some photographs of the inside, and maybe not in the staff's report, but I did see other photographs where you could see, I think, what looked like the ceiling of the roof of the maybe living room or something outside of the kitchen. It was this lovely wood roof with squares on it. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I've never been, sorry, through
Oh,
the
okay.
chair, I've not been in the property, I'm sorry, no, I don't.
Okay, so I was just wondering, because it does say in some of this documentation that remaining heritage features, they're open to be keeping some of those. And I just wondered if there was a plan for specifically what might be retained or, taken and salvaged.
Well, through the chair, no, I don't believe that inside Pearl there is any plan for that. In my conversation with municipal staff, for example, as I now understand it, 2 wooden doors were identified as being of some cultural value because they're, and I forget the words, Alyssa will help me with the phrase, but they're of a cultural value. So would we take those 2 doors, for example, take them off of the premises, store them, maybe incorporate them into something further on the property, or repurpose them through a third party who would use them for their, I don't know that. We had to move quickly when we acquired the property. We're very protective about all of the areas around all of our properties. You'll know about the Ancaster Mill, and so we have some very soft-thinking future plans for future developments. Parking is always a problem there, especially these days with the multiplicity of weddings and things going on. Could we design an auxiliary building on that site to use with the mill? We have a honeymoon suite as a freestanding reclaimed building in Elora Mill, for example. This building can't be reclaimed, but could we build something? Don't know. Could it be staff housing? We see an awful lot of pressures in our various properties. Staff are coming and going and having a difficult time finding housing if they work with us in Elora or Cambridge or Guelph and some other places. So we don't know yet. But we know that we wanted to, the property came on the market and we had to move quickly. And I think in our view, the building itself should come down. It's deteriorated beyond repair.
Karen, did you have anything further? Do we have other questions of our delegate? Okay, seeing none. Well, thank you very much for coming today. All right. May I have a mover and a seconder to receive the delegation?
Oh, I see lots of people.
Any
Stefan and Andy, thank you.
And as we move to vote, is there anyone opposed to receiving? Seeing none, that item is carried. So we now move on to our consent items. May I have a mover and a seconder to put the consent items on the floor? We have 9.1, 9.2, 9.3.
I see Councillor Kretsch and I see Lynn.
Are there any questions in regards to those items? Was staff going to, go ahead.
Through the chair, just in terms of our information report for the year in review, just want to thank both returning members and past members for all their dedication and time. A lot was accomplished last year, as you can see from the overview in that information report. So thank you for everything that you've done, and really appreciate all your assistance and advice to conserve heritage in Hamilton.
And I would echo that. I mean, when you take a look at the report, there's a lot of work that was accomplished over that year. Just to highlight, 4 designation bylaws passed under Part 4, 6 notices of intention to designate issued under Part 4, 15 properties added to the public list of candidates for designation under Part 4. Just so many different things that we've accomplished. You've got 2 designations, 13 properties listed on the Heritage Register, amongst all of the committee meetings that were accomplished over the year. And everything that was added to our work plan. And then under our Heritage Recognition Awards, we had 11 categories this year with all of these properties that were acknowledged for the hard work that they've done. And then from staff's perspective, what has gone on with hiring new staff and bringing new staff on board and the new roles that everybody's taken on. And I think we are more than lucky to have the staff that we have in place to help us with everything and to help make all of these accomplishments so important to what has been done. So thank you, everyone. And do we have a mover and a seconder to receive these items?
see Graham and I see Andy.
And as we move to vote, is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that item is carried. We now move on to our discussion items. 10.1 is our Hamilton Municipal Heritage Committee terms of reference. So we have some draft text here. Would staff like to make comment at all in regards to the terms of reference or clerks?
Through the chair, just for your awareness, as you know, the membership of the committee is 7 now. So if we could reflect that in the terms of reference, that would be an amendment to the terms of reference today. I think staff have also comment on the language.
Through the chair, yes, my apologies. I know we had chatted internally about a potential language to just consolidate given the reduced number of members and how sort of our goals in terms of representation across the city. Aliyah, I'm not sure if you have that or if you need me to pull that up.
Bear with me as I share that.
So from what you can see here in terms of a proposed amendment, recognizing that we're now looking at 7 citizen members instead of 11, and that the intent previously was to try to have representation from each of the communities that make up the amalgamated city of Hamilton. In the last few terms and calls for members, we haven't necessarily had representation from each community, although we do try to actively seek that out. That we just sort of consolidate the composition to reflect a little bit more leniency in terms of presenting or accepting citizens at large when we don't have representation from each of the communities.
So this item is on our agenda. If we're prepared to put forward any recommendations, we can do that today. We could also table this to a future meeting if there's any further discussion that would like to happen. The terms of reference can also be, if my understanding, can also be adjusted at any time. So if this is something that we agree with the wording as is now, but at a later date, we want to propose an amendment to it, we can also do that as well. So, or it can stay as is. But then there is some question as to the numbers. And I know clerks had also posed that it was challenging in the interviews this year, trying to find representation to fulfill that. Go ahead, Graham.
I'm on the Workforce Planning Board at Grand Erie, and we had at that time a requirement to have so many from business, so many from schools, so many from labor. And we had a hard time filling those roles. So when we changed our bylaws, we swapped the wording from representation such as one resident, the former 10 Ancaster, to the words representation of the stakeholders. So that allowed us to be a little more generous, and we looked for skill sets as opposed to, are you a business person? Are you a labor person? Are you an instructor? And we found out we've done much better. So that might be the way to do it. We got 7 members now, and look at representation of stakeholders as opposed to saying all these communities, because it may not work that way. And this time, obviously, it hasn't.
Oh, go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, sorry. I just had a question. I guess this is probably to the clerk's office or the members of the clerk's office who are there. Just as far as just understanding why we're changing the terms of reference to 7 instead of what it has been. Like, who makes that decision? Because as far as I've seen that matter was decided when they decided who the new members of this committee were, but that was done in a closed session. So we didn't get to, obviously it's a closed session because, when you're dealing with personal information, that isn't. But as far as changes to the policy, that shouldn't have been done in a closed session. And again, correct me if I'm wrong. And so, but now we're changing the terms of reference to reflect it's 7, but there's never really been any, like, why 7? Like, where did that number come from? Why are we deciding on that number? Is it us who's deciding? Is that a decision of council? Like, how does that work?
So Madam Chair, Lorraine Kohler is here to speak about that from Clerk's office.
Hello, everyone. It's Lorraine Kohler from the Clerk's office. I was the clerk for the selection committee this year. Selection committee appointed 7 members, which then is within their purview to change the membership number of the Heritage Committee, which they did in open session, which was then subsequently approved by council. I can also speak to the criteria that is in the terms of reference, and I can confirm that it has been an issue for several terms to get members from each one of those areas. So holding to the terms of reference exactly as written has been a challenge. I would say since the term beginning in 2014, which is when I joined and also facilitated the selection committee. So if this committee can think of another way of wording what they require without being this specific, that would be very helpful to the selection committee. I think it would also be clear to citizens about what is expected and very clear to staff on how to proceed with their next steps.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Councillor, go ahead.
Thanks. I think also it's important to make some like broad holistic comments about the process of selection. To echo what the chair of that committee said in public, I believe it was yesterday or the day before, frankly, I'm not sure. But when the applicant pool comes in every year, the goal of the selection committee is to choose the best committee, right? It's not about individuals. It's about saying, how do we choose the best committee based on who's applied? And the city has embarked on a new way of doing selection as term of council. One of those things is heavily related to an acronym you may not know called IDEA, which is inclusivity, diversity, equity, and accessibility. So it's gone ahead and used that as part of the criteria also through the selection process. And so there have been more than one of these occasions across many other committees. This isn't the only committee where the number has changed. The goal is to find the best committee of those who apply, and whatever that number lands at, that's what we're trying to make happen. I think it's important for us to change that because I do think that when we get into geographical only representation, we do miss the point sometimes. There are other kinds of representation that matters. So I think it's a good idea to update our terms of reference to have it be broader. We don't really have the authority to change those 7. Council's already made that decision, but we do have the authority to change to other wording. So just saying that so people understand as transparently as possible what I can talk about in public and what I can say as to how the process works and why we arrive at the decisions we do and the holistic way we try to arrive at them.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions or comments? So we have before us the terms of reference as they are. Again, the number will be 7. It's just in regards to that terminology. There was some draft text that was presented to us. Is that a recommendation that the committee would like to put forward, or Councillor?
I'm happy to move it.
So moved by Councillor Kretsch, the amendment, and seconded by Karen.
And as we move to vote, is there anyone opposed to that recommendation? Seeing none, that item is carried. Item 10.2 is our monthly report on recommended proactive listings for the Municipal Heritage Register, December 2023, PED 23193. Is there any discussions? The recommendation is that staff be directed to list the property located at 164 Kensington Avenue North, Hamilton Ward 3 on the Municipal Register as a non-designated property that council believes to be of cultural heritage value or interest as outlined in report PED 23193 in accordance with section 27 of the Ontario Heritage Act. So may I have a mover and a seconder to put that recommendation on the floor?
I see Andy and I see Lynn.
And is there any questions or comments in regards to that? If not, we'll move to vote. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that item is carried. Item 10.3 is the notice of intention to demolish the building located at 535 Old Dundas Road in Ancaster, being a non-designated property listed on the municipal register PUD 23183 in Ward 12. So the recommendation is that the non-designated property located at 535 Old Dundas Road in Ancaster be removed from the municipal register. And go ahead, Leslie.
Through the chair, just to address some of the questions that the members had brought up with the delegate, I'd be happy to pull up the image. It's in the appendix of the ceiling that Karen had mentioned. Okay, it's on page 6 of 11 of Appendix B in the engineer's report that was submitted with the demolition notice. It is a contemporary sort of wood paneling ceiling and features on the interior. And then to just speak to, in the staff report, there's mention of potentially salvageable features, relatively minor. Basically, there's an interior paneled door, a single door that appears to be early 20th century. And there's also the front door, which appears to be early 20th century, that seem to be in good shape. So rather than them going in the landfill, staff would strongly encourage they be retained. Not necessarily for having to be reused on site, but there are a number of companies that salvage these types of materials for reuse in other projects. There's also some remaining scroll work on the porch that could potentially be salvaged and might be of interest, but from staff's perspectives, those were the only features potentially we'd like to see retained. Most of the upper story windows were quite deteriorated and rotted, and a lot of the other windows had already been replaced. And I'll just note in terms of this type of notice of intention to demolish under the Ontario Heritage Act, it starts the 6-day clock, before which time an owner isn't able to demolish, and staff are recommending the property be removed, but we're not able to add conditions to its removal or prior to demolition. So we can't add a condition for these things to be salvaged, just to clarify.
Graham?
So, well, you can't ask for a condition, you can ask nicely.
Through the chair, yes. And we did, it was great meeting Peter today, but we were also conversing previously with another representative from the owners. So it has been mentioned, and we have strongly encouraged that that be done before demolition.
Andrew, you have a question?
Yeah, just because I'm obviously new to this entire process in Hamilton, just curiosity, when you're talking about salvaging stuff that isn't going to be reused on the site, is it generally the idea that they would then give it to a salvage company, or is there other ways that you ask for these things to be salvaged?
Through the chair to Andrew, great question. So there's no specific parameters. We would leave it up to the discretion. If it was maybe part of a Planning Act application, there might be different requirements, but in this kind of scenario, we would provide the owner with a list of known companies that we're aware of as a potential starting point to make inquiries to see if folks are interested in salvaging. It would also be up to the owner's discretion if they themselves want to salvage, as Peter mentioned earlier, and potentially retain features for reuse on site as well.
Excellent, thanks.
So on this item, may I have a mover and a seconder to put the recommendations on the floor?
I see Graham, I see Andrew.
Are there any further questions in regards to this item? Seeing none, as we move to vote, is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that item is carried. Item 10.4 is our Hamilton Wentworth Heritage Association membership renewal. We received notice just in regards to that membership renewal. So we have a couple of things. The membership can be approved, staff to be directed to prepare and execute the required documentation, and that the membership fee be paid from the planning account. So that would be the motion that would be before us. And I think the cost was $20, I think it was. $20. So may I have a mover and a seconder to put forward the recommendations?
I see Karen, I see Stefan.
And if there's no other questions, oh, go ahead, Councilor.
Yeah, I have questions. For our $20, not that I'm concerned about the $20, but how do we participate in this association as a member? Like, who does that activity? Is it us as the committee? Is it you as the chair? Is it somebody on staff? Are there meetings of the membership? What goes on? I don't know.
Well, it's so the association, when they have their events, will be included in those communications. So when they have, they're typically the ones organizing Heritage Day. So we would be invited to those events. They publish a book of Who's Who, which is a consolidation of contact information for all of the various heritage groups. We'd be included in that documentation. And then when they do have special events, then we would be included in that. We used to participate as actively when they had a Heritage Day and there was display tables. We would participate in that. They have ceased to have that as their format. I believe this year it's just going to be some guest speakers, and it'll be an event at Dundurn Castle.
Thanks. So as far as you know, it's not really a membership for governance perspective. From a governance perspective, it's more like a newsletter and promo fee. Okay.
Technically, it's to be a part of the community of heritage.
Sure.
It's all the associations.
Yep.
And, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Did we have mover and seconder?
Yes, Madam Chair, we do.
And as we move to vote, is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that item is carried. We now move on to our general information and other business. Our 13.1 is our buildings and landscapes. Are there any additions to the list that anyone would like to make, or any removals if we, Councillor?
No, but I had a question or a comment just to let you know about the list in general now that I've got some properties I'm taking care of. So there's a member of my staff who's going to help with this, and it's my goal to actually kind of produce a little bit of a report for the public from our office, just saying like, here's what's going on, here's a list of things we're following, and we've actually decided we're going to have a Heritage Council. In the process of taking on doing this, a bunch of things came up. We started looking at the heritage asset map. We started thinking more about it. We started thinking about the concentration of heritage assets in Ward 2. And while I was already aware of the fact that there's like many, many heritage assets in Ward 2, I don't think I was quite aware of the concentration with respect to the rest of the city, which is low in some places. And I can't really tell quite at this moment if it's the highest concentration in Ward 2, but I'm pretty sure that it is. And so knowing that and having done an impact report recently where I talked about the Durand neighborhood and how many heritage assets are there, being the most in that area, it just seems like it's a responsibility for us to do something. So we're going to invite a member from every neighborhood to participate in a Ward 2 Heritage Council. And I'm not sure if it makes sense to report those things here or not, but I thought I'd let you know, like this is the Heritage Committee, who else am I letting know, that we're doing that, and we're going to try and report that stuff publicly so people know what's going on with Heritage in Ward 2. So just thought I would share. In the new year, we'll be doing that.
That's fantastic news. Thank you, Councillor. Well, that's great. All right. Are there any additions to the property list? If none, we do have a couple of properties that are outstanding for coverage. I'm not sure if anyone's had a chance to think about those ones. We have 1155 to 1157 Beach Boulevard, which is the Beach Canal Lighthouse and Cottage. So we still need a representative to watch that property. We also have 50 to 54 Sanders Boulevard, Binkley property. No one at the moment. Okay. So we'll keep those on the list for coverage, and we'll come back to that for January. So we have our list. Does anyone have any properties that they would like to report on? If we could start a speakers list of anyone that would like to. Yeah. No updates this month? All right. Sounds good. All right, so I guess we'll celebrate the Ward 2 news, and that is incredible that we're going to have that kind of overview and coverage, Councillor. Thank you. So may I have a mover and a seconder to receive that update?
I see Andy, I see Lynn.
And is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that item is carried. Item 13.2 was general staff update. Ken, would you like to provide an update?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just quickly for Lynn, I know we talked about the Greensville Township Hall at the last meeting. I have heard back from facilities and Indra. He's indicating that they are trying to do bi-weekly inspections. There has been some vandalism. They aren't allowing vehicles to park at the facility. It still is on the surplus list, although the councillor, A. Wilson, is working on that. You may know more about that than I do. So if there's still issues, feel free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to connect you with facilities, especially around heritage, with the building, but please keep watching it. They're doing their best, they're indicating. So, so thank you very much. And I'd just like to echo what Alyssa said further, as this is the last meeting of 2023. It has been a very challenging year. We've had some, what I've indicated in previous meetings with planning, some rather volatile policy changes from our friends in the province that I think this group and staff have responded to quite well and have moved some things forward here. So thanks to everybody who's been involved, and we're all very much looking forward to 2024.
Thank you, Ken. Lynn, did you have a question in regards to your, okay. All right, that's great. And then if there's no other business, I guess, may I have a motion to receive that update first? Do we have a?
I see Lynn, I see Councillor Crutch.
And is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that item is carried. Is there any other business? If there's none, we can adjourn today. Just a note that our next meeting is scheduled for January 26th at 12 p.m. Okay, may I have a mover and a seconder to adjourn our meeting?
I see Karen, I see Councillor Crutch.
And is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that item is carried. So as Ken said, this is our last meeting for 2023. I just want to wish everyone a very happy holiday and a Merry Christmas, and hope everyone enjoys some time off with their family. And we will meet back here in January. So thank you everyone for everything you've done so far this year, and we appreciate it and look forward to the rest of the term.